Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I was reviewing quarterly marketing reports at my desk in downtown Portland when my phone buzzed with a message that would change everything. Jessica, my older sister, had sent a text that made my coffee cup freeze, halfway to my lips. We planned the family reunion at your beach house in North Carolina. 47 people, 4 days starting Friday. Stock the fridge by Thursday night. I stared at the screen reading those words 3 times before the audacity hit me fully. My beach house. The Outer Banks property I'd inherited from Grandpa 6 months ago and spent my entire divorce settlement renovating. The sanctuary I'd never offered to anyone for anything, let alone a massive family invasion. My fingers moved quickly. No. Her response came instantly with 3 laughing emoji faces. We're coming anyway. What are you going to do? Call the HOA? That's when I realized my family still saw me as the same pushover I'd always been. 3 hours passed before I could focus on work again. My mind kept circling back to Jessica's text and the casual cruelty behind it. This wasn't spontaneous family planning. This was a calculated power play, designed to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy. Growing up as the middle child in our wealthy Connecticut household had taught me early that I existed to solve other people's problems. While Jessica, now 32, commanded attention as the golden child, and Cameron, our 25-year-old brother, charmed his way out of every responsibility, I became the family's designated fixer. When Jessica threw parties in high school, I cleaned up the mess. When Cameron crashed Dad's car, I helped cover the repair costs with my summer job money. When either of them needed homework done, somehow it became my responsibility to help them succeed. Jessica had perfected the art of making her demands sound reasonable. She worked as a real estate agent in Greenwich, married to Derek, an investment banker with more ego than sense. They lived in a sprawling colonial that Mom and Dad had helped them purchase, raised twin daughters who attended private school on the grandparents' dime, and somehow still managed to position themselves as the family's struggling young couple whenever financial assistance was needed. Cameron represented the opposite extreme of entitlement. He'd been living in our parents' basement for 3 years, pursuing his music career with the same dedication most people reserved for casual hobbies. His latest venture involved starting a podcast about Connecticut's underground music scene, which apparently required expensive recording equipment that Dad had cheerfully funded. Cameron's charm offensive worked on everyone except me. I'd grown tired of his elaborate explanations for why this month's breakthrough opportunity required just a little more family investment. My inheritance of Grandpa's beach house had disrupted the family's established dynamics. The property sat on an exclusive stretch of the Outer Banks, a 2-story cedar shake cottage with panoramic ocean views and direct beach access. Grandpa had left it specifically to me with a handwritten note tucked inside his will, for the grandson who appreciates solitude and simple pleasures. He'd understood something about my character that the rest of the family had consistently overlooked. The divorce from Sarah 8 months earlier had drained my savings account, but freed me from another relationship where my needs came last. She'd complained constantly about my family's treatment of me, while simultaneously criticizing any attempts I made to establish boundaries. The beach house represented my fresh start, my sanctuary, my first adult space that belonged entirely to me. I'd spent $30,000 of my divorce settlement updating the electrical system, reinforcing the foundation against hurricane damage, and building a wraparound deck that faced the Atlantic. Every improvement had been chosen, carefully designed to create the perfect writing retreat where I could finally finish my novel about family dysfunction. The irony wasn't lost on me that Jessica now wanted to transform my refuge into the epicenter of the exact dynamics I was trying to escape. But her text message revealed something more disturbing than simple entitlement. When I checked my email that evening, I discovered Jessica had already sent detailed reunion invitations to our entire extended family. The message sent 3 days earlier began with, "Ralph has graciously offered his beautiful beach house for our family reunion," and included a comprehensive schedule of activities. Friday would feature arrival and welcome barbecue with Ralph designated as grill master and beverage coordinator. Saturday promised beach volleyball tournaments, sandcastle competitions for the kids, and evening bonfire with s'mores, all materials to be provided by the host. Sunday included planned group fishing excursion with Ralph, responsible for securing boat charters and equipment rentals. Monday wrapped up with farewell brunch and group photos followed by house cleaning coordination, led by Ralph. The invitation concluded with Jessica's contact information for RSVPs and a note that Ralph is handling all accommodation details and meal planning. She'd signed my name to the entire document. 43 family members had already responded with enthusiasm, thanking me for my generosity and sharing their excitement about reconnecting at my beautiful seaside retreat. Cousin Martha from Virginia asked about bringing her 3 golden retrievers. Uncle Pete wanted to know if the house could accommodate his 30-foot RV in the driveway. Aunt Carol requested detailed information about gluten-free dining options and the nearest emergency veterinary clinic for her diabetic cat. Jessica had responded to every inquiry, as my spokesperson making commitments I'd never authorized. Yes, pets were welcome. Yes, RV parking was available. Yes, specialized dietary needs would be accommodated. She'd promised everything to everyone, while ensuring that every responsibility fell on my shoulders. The most infuriating discovery came when I found vendor confirmation emails in my spam folder. Jessica had somehow obtained my credit card information and signed contracts with local businesses using my name and financial details. A catering company expected $4,000 for weekend meal service. A rental outfit had reserved tables, chairs, umbrellas, and beach equipment for another $3,000. A local grocery service planned to deliver $500 worth of food and beverages Thursday evening. All of it authorized by Jessica Miller, sister of property owner, with payment guaranteed by Ralph Miller's credit card on file. Thursday morning brought a phone call that nearly sent me over the edge. My supervisor at the marketing firm, Janet, asked about my vacation request for the following week. I'd been working toward a promotion to senior marketing coordinator, and this was exactly the wrong time to appear unreliable or disorganized. I never submitted a vacation request. I told her, feeling my stomach drop toward my shoes. That's strange, Janet replied, shuffling through papers. I have an email here from Jessica Miller requesting emergency family leave on your behalf. She explained that you're hosting an important family reunion and needed the time off for preparation and hosting duties. Jessica had contacted my workplace directly, jeopardizing my professional reputation to support her elaborate manipulation. She'd positioned the request as a family emergency, implying that I was too overwhelmed to handle the communication myself. The email painted me as either disorganized or emotionally unstable, neither of which aligned with the reliable professional image I'd carefully cultivated. There's been a misunderstanding, I explained to Janet. My sister made that request without my knowledge or consent. I'll be at work Monday as scheduled. Janet's silence stretched uncomfortably before she responded. Ralph, if you're having family issues that are affecting your work, we should probably discuss this privately. I don't want personal problems to impact your promotion consideration. The call ended with Janet suggesting we meet Friday morning to clarify the situation and ensure everything was under control. Jessica's interference had potentially sabotaged months of careful career building with a single manipulative email. I tried calling my parents, hoping for sanity and support. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice bright with excitement. Ralph's sweetheart Jessica told us about the wonderful reunion you're planning. Your father and I are so proud that you're finally embracing your role as the family's next generation leader. Grandpa would be thrilled to see his house bringing everyone together. Mom, I never agreed to host any reunion. Jessica made these plans without asking me. Oh, honey, don't be modest. Jessica showed us the beautiful invitations and all the thoughtful details you planned. The bonfire night sounds magical, and the fishing expedition will be perfect for the men to bond. You've really outdone yourself with the organization. I didn't organize anything. Jessica used my name and property without permission. Mom's tone shifted to gentle disappointment. Ralph, sweetheart, I understand you might feel overwhelmed by the responsibility, but family gatherings require sacrifice from everyone. Your grandfather always said that property ownership comes with obligations to share and serve others. Grandpa left the house specifically to me, not to the entire family. Well, yes, but he certainly intended for it to bring the family together. Jessica is just helping you fulfill his wishes. You can't seriously consider turning away 47 family members who've already made travel arrangements. The conversation continued in circles, with Mom reframing every objection as selfishness or anxiety rather than legitimate boundary setting. She'd completely bought into Jessica's narrative that I was hosting willingly, but feeling overwhelmed by the details. Dad took a different approach when he called later that evening. His strategy involved financial pressure wrapped in seemingly helpful suggestions. Son, Jessica mentioned you might need assistance with the reunion expenses. Your mother and I would be happy to contribute, but we think it would be more efficient if Jessica coordinated the vendors and payments. She has more experience with event planning, and we don't want you to stress about details that aren't your strength. Dad, I don't want financial help because I don't want to host this reunion at all. Ralph, I understand this feels like a big responsibility, but sometimes we have to step up for family even when it's inconvenient. Your beach house is perfect for this kind of gathering, and honestly, none of the rest of us have suitable space. Jessica's house is too small, Cameron obviously can't host anything, and your mother and I are too old to handle that kind of chaos. So I'm automatically volunteered because I have the most convenient property. You're asked to contribute because you're capable and fortunate enough to own something special. With privilege comes responsibility, son. Jessica is working incredibly hard to coordinate everything, so you don't have to worry about planning. All you need to do is open your home and let the family reconnect. The financial manipulation became clear when Dad mentioned that Jessica had already coordinated catering and rental services to take pressure off you. He offered to reimburse the costs, but only if Jessica remained in charge of vendor relationships and payment processing. This would establish Jessica as the family's official event coordinator, while making me a passive host in my own home. Meanwhile, the Facebook assault had begun in earnest. Jessica posted in our family group with childhood photos and emotional appeals about honoring Grandpa's memory through family unity. She tagged everyone with reminiscences about previous family gatherings and excitement about creating new memories at my gorgeous beach retreat. Cousin Patricia from Richmond commented about bringing her golden retrievers and asked about pet-friendly accommodations. Jessica responded immediately. Ralph loves animals and can't wait to meet your fur babies. The beach will be perfect for them to run and play. Uncle Marcus inquired about RV parking for his 30-foot Winnebago. Jessica's reply, Ralph has plenty of driveway space and is excited to accommodate everyone's travel needs. Aunt Linda detailed her family's complex dietary restrictions. Gluten-free dairy, free nut-free with separate meal requirements for each of her 4 children. Jessica's response, Ralph is planning an amazing menu with options for everyone. He's so thoughtful about making sure all family members feel welcome and comfortable. Every comment thread painted me as an enthusiastic, generous host who'd planned every detail for maximum family enjoyment. Jessica responded to every question with my alleged preferences and promises, building a narrative where any change in plans would make me appear unreliable or unwelcoming. The most disturbing element was how quickly other family members embraced the fiction. People who'd barely spoken to me in years were suddenly expressing gratitude for my thoughtfulness and generous spirit. They shared memories of past family gatherings and excitement about reconnecting at my beautiful property. Several relatives posted about canceling other vacation plans to attend my special reunion. Cameron surprised me by calling Thursday night with what sounded like genuine concern. "Hey, brother, I saw all the Facebook stuff about this reunion. Did you really plan this whole thing? Or is Jessica doing her usual steamroller routine? What do you think?" "I think Jessica saw an opportunity to play family matriarch using your resources while taking credit for bringing everyone together. Classic Jessica move. Maximum attention and appreciation with minimal personal cost. So why aren't you saying anything publicly?" "Because I'm a coward who doesn't want to become her next target." "But Ralph, you don't have to let this happen. You own that house free and clear. You have every right to say no." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one being painted as the family villain for having boundaries." "Maybe being the family villain is better than being the family doormat." Cameron's words hit harder than I wanted to admit. For 28 years, I'd chosen doormat status because it seemed easier than confrontation. But doormat status had cost me my marriage, my savings, my peace of mind, and nearly my professional reputation. Maybe it was time to discover what happened when I chose differently. Friday morning arrived with a disturbing email from my credit card company flagging unusual activity. 5 large charges had been processed overnight: the catering deposit equipment rental grocery delivery, a liquor store purchase, and something called Outer Banks Event Services for $1,500. Jessica had somehow obtained my complete financial information and was actively spending my money to support her elaborate charade. The charges totaled over $8,000 more than I'd spent on vacation in the past 3 years combined. I called the credit card company immediately, expecting to dispute the charges as fraud. Instead, I learned that Jessica had provided my social security number, address, phone number, and answers to my security questions. The customer service representative explained that family members with shared financial information could sometimes make authorized purchases, especially when emergency contact details were involved. But I never authorized these purchases or gave her permission to use my account. "Sir, the charges came from businesses in your area with event planning services, and the person making the purchases had all your verification information. Without evidence of identity theft, these would be considered authorized transactions." My hands shook as I realized Jessica's level of premeditation. She'd obtained my financial details from our parents' emergency contact database, where all adult children's information was stored for family emergencies. Technically, she hadn't stolen the information. She'd accessed it through legitimate family channels, then used it for unauthorized but difficult to prove fraudulent purposes. I scheduled an appointment with Marcus Chen, a lawyer friend from college, who specialized in family law and fraud cases. Marcus reviewed the documentation I'd gathered: Jessica's forged contracts, unauthorized social media posts, and credit card charges. "This is complicated," Marcus admitted. "She's walking a legal tightrope between family coordination and outright fraud. The vendor contracts signed in your name are probably actionable, especially if you can prove you never gave consent. But the credit card charges are murkier because she used legitimately obtained information from family emergency contacts." "What are my options?" "You can dispute the charges and file a police report for identity theft. You can also pursue civil action for the forged contracts. But Ralph, you need to understand that this will probably destroy your family relationships permanently." Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The legal research triggered a flood of suppressed memories about Jessica's manipulation tactics. I remembered being 12 years old when Jessica convinced me to forge our parents' signatures on her failing report card. She'd tearfully explained that Mom and Dad would be devastated by her grades, and that helping her was the loving, brotherly thing to do. When our parents discovered the forgery, Jessica immediately threw me under the bus. She claimed I'd forced her to cheat because I was jealous of her academic success and wanted to get her in trouble. I received 2 weeks of grounding and loss of allowance, while Jessica got sympathetic talks about not letting her brother pressure her into poor decisions. High school brought a more expensive version of the same pattern. Jessica convinced me to co-sign her car loan because her credit wasn't established yet. She promised to make all payments and insisted the arrangement was temporary until she could refinance in her own name. 6 months later, Jessica stopped making payments and refused to answer my calls about the delinquent account. When I confronted our parents, they sided with Jessica's explanation that I should have read the loan terms more carefully before signing legal documents. The car got repossessed, my credit score tanked, and Jessica somehow emerged as the victim of my poor financial judgment. College years escalated the manipulation to new levels. Jessica needed a co-signer for her senior year apartment lease because her previous landlord wouldn't provide a positive reference. She swore this time would be different, that she'd learned from past mistakes and would never put me in a difficult financial position again. 3 months into the lease, Jessica moved in with her boyfriend Derek without telling me or the landlord. She simply stopped paying rent and avoided my increasingly desperate phone calls. When I contacted her roommates, I learned Jessica had been telling them I was covering her portion of the rent as a graduation gift. The landlord held me responsible for $8,000 in back rent and damages. When I begged our parents for help, Dad lectured me about enabling Jessica's irresponsibility by making legal commitments I couldn't afford. Mom suggested I should have anticipated Jessica's behavior based on previous patterns and planned accordingly. Every memory followed the same script Jessica created. A crisis manipulated me into solving it, then positioned herself as the victim when consequences arose. Our parents consistently reinforced this dynamic by holding me responsible for outcomes, while excusing Jessica's behavior as immaturity or circumstances beyond her control. The current beach house situation represented the same pattern on a much larger scale. Jessica had created elaborate financial and social obligations. Using my resources, positioned herself as the generous family coordinator, and ensured that any attempt to cancel would make me appear selfish and unreliable. She'd crafted the perfect manipulation where I absorbed all costs and responsibility while she received all credit and appreciation. But this time felt different because the stakes were higher. This wasn't just about money or credit scores. This was about my sanctuary, my fresh start, my attempt to build boundaries after a lifetime of being the family's designated problem solver. If I allowed Jessica to succeed with this manipulation, I'd be confirming that nothing had really changed, despite my divorce, my inheritance, and my attempts at independence. I spent Friday afternoon researching property law and reviewing my homeowner's insurance policy. The beach house sat in an exclusive planned community with strict rules about commercial activities and large gatherings. Hosting 47 people for a 4-day party could potentially violate community covenants and create liability issues if anyone got injured on my property. More disturbing was my discovery that Jessica had already listed my beach house on a premium vacation rental website. The listing, created 3 days earlier, advertised exclusive Outer Banks oceanfront estate for $400 per night, with availability immediately following the reunion dates. Jessica's rental description included amenities I didn't possess, commercial-grade kitchen hot tub game room, and accommodations for up to 50 guests. She'd posted professional photos that must have been taken during a previous visit and written glowing reviews under fake guest names, praising the property's luxury features and perfect location. The listing had already received 3 bookings for the weeks following the planned reunion, generating $1,200 in advance payments that would be deposited into Jessica's personal account. She wasn't just using my property for a family reunion. She was launching an unauthorized vacation rental business using my inheritance as her inventory. Friday afternoon marked the beginning of my rebellion. I'd spent 28 years accepting Jessica's manipulations because confrontation seemed more painful than compliance. But looking at the vacation rental listing she'd created using my property, I realized that compliance was actually the more painful choice. Compliance meant sacrificing my autonomy, my financial security, and my emotional well-being to enable someone else's selfish ambitions. The first step involved changing every security code associated with the beach house. I called the property management company and updated gate codes, alarm system passwords, and lockbox combinations. As the sole property owner, I also revoked any access permissions that might have been granted to family members during previous visits. Next, I contacted Elite Property Protection, a security firm specializing in residential protection services. The owner, Jack Sullivan, was a retired police officer who understood family boundary violations from both professional and personal experience. "Mr. Miller, we handle situations like this more often than you'd think. Adult children feeling entitled to parents' or grandparents' property, family members who don't respect ownership boundaries, relatives who assume they can use property without permission. You have every legal right to control access to your home." Jack's team could provide 24-hour property monitoring, starting immediately with uniformed guards stationed at strategic locations to prevent unauthorized entry. The service cost $1,200 for a weekend, but I considered it an investment in establishing boundaries that should have been set years earlier. What happens when 47 people show up expecting to stay at my house? They'll find a locked gate, professional security personnel, and clear signage indicating private property with no trespassing allowed. Most people leave quickly once they realize the property owner is serious about enforcement. What if they don't leave? Then we contact local law enforcement and document everything for potential legal action. Private property rights are pretty straightforward in North Carolina. You can exclude anyone for any reason. I spent Friday evening documenting everything I'd discovered about Jessica's unauthorized activities. Screenshots of her social media posts, copies of forged vendor contracts, records of credit card charges, evidence of the vacation rental listing, all organized in a comprehensive file that proved systematic manipulation and potential fraud. The vacation rental platform responded quickly when I reported Jessica's unauthorized listing. Their fraud investigation team required proof of property ownership, which I provided through deed records, tax documents, and utility bills. Within 3 hours, they suspended the listing and froze any payments pending resolution of the ownership dispute. Ms. Miller will need to provide documentation proving her authority to list this property, the customer service representative explained. If she can't demonstrate legal right to advertise the rental, her account will be permanently terminated and any advance payments will be refunded to guests. The platform also noted that Jessica's listing violated their terms of service by advertising amenities that didn't exist and using potentially fraudulent guest reviews. Her account was flagged for investigation regardless of the ownership dispute outcome. But the most satisfying discovery came when I researched Jessica's other online activities. She'd been running similar vacation rental scams using other family properties for over a year. Her personal website advertised exclusive access to luxury family estates, with properties including our cousin's lake house in New Hampshire, our aunt's ski condo in Vermont, and our uncle's hunting cabin in Montana. None of these family members had authorized Jessica to advertise their properties, and several listings included the same fabricated amenities and fake guest reviews she'd used for my beach house. Jessica had created an entire business model based on exploiting family relationships and property access. I forwarded this information to the affected family members, along with evidence that Jessica was potentially generating thousands of dollars in unauthorized income using their properties. Cousin David was particularly outraged to discover his New Hampshire lake house being advertised as a romantic waterfront retreat, complete with amenities he'd never installed. I gave Jessica the spare key for emergencies, not so she could run a bed and breakfast operation. David fumed during our phone conversation. How many people has she let stay in my house without my knowledge? The family phone tree lit up Friday night as relatives discovered Jessica's unauthorized rental activities. Several had been wondering about unfamiliar cars in their driveways or unusual wear on their properties during periods when they thought the houses were empty. Uncle Marcus called to inform me that Jessica had also been using his RV for unauthorized rental purposes, advertising it on outdoor recreation websites as available for camping trips and music festivals. He'd been confused by the mileage increases and wear patterns that didn't match his own usage. "I thought I was losing my memory about where I'd taken that RV," Marcus admitted. Turns out Jessica was running a side business renting it to strangers while I was at work. The scope of Jessica's deception was staggering. She'd systematically exploited every family property she could access, creating elaborate rental listings and generating significant income without anyone's knowledge or consent. The beach house reunion wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern of viewing family resources as her personal business opportunities. As Friday evening progressed, my phone buzzed constantly with family members calling to discuss Jessica's unauthorized activities. The consensus was shock and anger, with several relatives planning to join forces for potential legal action against her rental scam operation. But I also received disturbing calls from confused family members who'd already begun traveling to North Carolina for the reunion. Aunt Carol had driven 6 hours from Atlanta with her diabetic cat and specialized dietary supplies. Uncle Pete was somewhere in Virginia with his 30-foot RV expecting to park in my driveway for 4 days. These family members weren't complicit in Jessica's manipulation. They were fellow victims who'd been deceived about my willing participation in hosting duties. They'd rearranged schedules, spent money on travel, and made arrangements based on Jessica's lies about my enthusiastic cooperation. The ethical complexity of my situation became clear as Friday night wore on. Protecting my boundaries meant disappointing innocent family members who'd been manipulated by Jessica's deceptions. But enabling Jessica's manipulation meant sacrificing my own well-being to avoid other people's temporary inconvenience. At midnight, I made the final decision that would define my relationship with family manipulation forever. I would protect my property and my boundaries, regardless of who else might be inconvenienced by Jessica's lies. She had created this crisis through deliberate deception, and she could take responsibility for solving it. Saturday morning would bring the confrontation I'd been avoiding for 28 years. Friday morning brought perfect beach weather, 78 degrees gentle breeze off the Atlantic, and crystalline blue skies that would have been ideal for a family reunion if I'd actually planned one. I sat on my deck with coffee and a breakfast sandwich watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and orange. For the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely peaceful. Elite property protection had arrived at dawn. Jack Sullivan positioned his team strategically around the property perimeter. One guard at the main gate, another monitoring the beach access point, and a third patrolling the community roads leading to my house. All wore professional uniforms and carried communication equipment that allowed constant coordination. "Mr. Miller, we're set up to document everything that happens today," Jack explained during his final briefing. "Security cameras at all entry points, audio recording equipment, and body cameras on each team member. Whatever your family tries, we'll have complete evidence for any legal proceedings." The first arrivals appeared at 8:30, a blue minivan with Virginia license plates pulling up to the locked front gate. Through my security monitors, I watched 5 adults and 3 children climb out, stretching after what must have been a long drive. They approached the gate with confident expectations, clearly anticipating easy entry to begin their vacation. When the old access codes failed to work, confusion replaced confidence. I observed family members checking their phones for messages, trying different code combinations, and eventually calling Jessica for assistance. Their body language shifted from annoyance to genuine concern as minutes passed without resolution. 8:45 brought the arrival of Uncle Pete's massive RV, which barely fit on the narrow community road. He parked behind the minivan, creating the first signs of the traffic nightmare that would develop throughout the morning. Aunt Carol arrived 10 minutes later with her specially equipped van containing diabetic cat supplies and enough gluten-free food to feed a small army. By 9:15-12, vehicles had gathered outside my locked gate, with more arriving every few minutes. The community road was becoming impassable as larger vehicles like RVs and rental trucks blocked access for regular residents. I could see neighbors peering out their windows with growing concern about the developing chaos. Jessica's dramatic entrance came at 9:30 in Derek's black luxury SUV. She emerged with the confidence of someone who expected her problems to dissolve through sheer force of personality. Her twin daughters climbed out wearing matching beach outfits and carrying sand toys, excited about their promised vacation at Uncle Ralph's house. I watched through security cameras as Jessica strode purposefully toward the gate, her designer sundress and expensive sandals perfectly coordinated for a successful family matriarch's grand entrance. When the access codes failed, her expression transformed from confidence to irritation to genuine anger in the space of 30 seconds. "Ralph," she screamed at the security camera mounted above the gate. "Stop this ridiculous behavior immediately. Open this gate right now." Jessica's rage escalated quickly when I didn't respond to her demands. She began shaking the metal gate posts, kicking at the electronic lock mechanism, and screaming increasingly creative threats about what she'd do if I didn't stop acting like a spoiled child. The security footage captured her complete psychological breakdown as family members watched in growing horror. Jessica threw rocks at the security cameras, attempted to climb the fence in her designer dress, and screamed profanities that made her young daughters burst into tears. "You can't do this to us," she shrieked, her carefully maintained facade crumbling completely. "We've spent thousands of dollars on this reunion. People took time off work. Children have been looking forward to this for weeks." Derek attempted to calm his wife, but Jessica was beyond reason. She pushed him away violently, consumed by narcissistic fury at being denied the control she'd taken for granted. Her meltdown was being witnessed by 47 family members, all of whom had expected her to deliver the promised vacation experience. The most revealing moment came when Jessica rallied the gathering crowd with an impromptu speech about my character defects. Security cameras recorded her inflammatory rhetoric about my selfishness, my betrayal of family values, and my ungrateful attitude toward everything the family has done for me. "Ralph has always been jealous of anyone else's success," she announced to the assembled relatives. "He can't stand that I'm better at organizing events, that I have a successful marriage, that I know how to bring people together. This is his revenge for not being the favorite child." Her psychological projection was stunning to witness. Jessica accused me of jealousy, while demonstrating her own resentment about property ownership. She claimed I was destroying family unity, while she orchestrated elaborate deceptions and unauthorized financial commitments. She portrayed herself as a victim of my selfishness, while demanding access to resources she'd never been offered. Several family members attempted to de-escalate the situation by suggesting alternative accommodations. Cousin Patricia proposed renting hotel rooms and still enjoying planned activities at nearby beaches. Uncle Marcus offered his RV as temporary accommodation for anyone who needed shelter. But Jessica rejected every compromise with increasingly hysterical accusations about my mental state. She claimed I was having a psychotic break triggered by my divorce and needed professional intervention before I hurt myself or others. She suggested the family should contact law enforcement for a wellness check because I was clearly not competent to make rational decisions. The manipulation was masterful and terrifying. Jessica was positioning my boundary enforcement as evidence of mental illness, creating a narrative where family intervention would be justified for my own protection. If successful, this strategy would allow her to override my property rights while appearing to act in my best interest. Derek finally stepped forward to physically restrain Jessica when she grabbed a large rock and attempted to smash the gate's electronic lock system. Her daughters were sobbing, hysterically traumatized by witnessing their mother's violent breakdown. Other family members began loading back into their vehicles, clearly uncomfortable with Jessica's behavior and eager to escape the chaos. But the most damaging revelation was yet to come. In her fury, Jessica began screaming about financial details that she'd never intended to make public. "You think you're so special because Grandpa left you his stupid house," she shrieked at the security camera. "You don't deserve it. You never visit family. You don't maintain relationships. I'm the one who holds this family together. I'm the one who deserves property, and appreciation. The emotional outburst revealed years of suppressed resentment about inheritance decisions, family roles, and perceived favoritism. Jessica's breakdown was providing documentary evidence of her true motivations while demolishing any remaining family sympathy for her position. As the morning chaos continued, I realized this confrontation was necessary, regardless of how painful it might be for everyone involved. Jessica's mask had finally slipped, completely showing family members the manipulative, self-serving person I'd been dealing with my entire life. At 10:30, everything changed with the arrival of my father's black Mercedes sedan. I watched through security monitors as Theodore Miller stepped out with the grave expression he reserved for serious family crises. My mother Margaret emerged from the passenger side looking horrified by the chaos surrounding my property. The gathered family members fell silent as my parents approached the locked gate. Even Jessica stopped her screaming, perhaps recognizing that Dad's presence meant the situation had escalated beyond her ability to control through manipulation and tantrums. Theodore walked directly to Jessica with an authority I rarely witnessed during my childhood. Jessica Marie Miller, stop this behavior immediately. But Jessica, consumed by narcissistic rage, turned her fury on our father. Don't you dare lecture me about behavior. Ralph is the one destroying our family. Ralph is the one refusing to honor Grandpa's wishes. Ralph is the selfish, ungrateful brat who won't share his precious property. Enough, Jessica. Theodore's voice carried a weight of discovery and profound disappointment. Tell them why you really need access to this house. Margaret gasped audibly, clearly, understanding a reference that Jessica had hoped to keep private. The assembled family members leaned forward, sensing that crucial information was about to emerge. I don't know what you're talking about, Jessica replied, but her voice lacked conviction. The psychological advantage had shifted to Theodore, and everyone present could feel the change in dynamics. Tell them about the $47,000 missing from our business accounts, Theodore continued relentlessly. Tell them about the falsified vendor payments and padded expense reports. Tell them why you're so desperate to force Ralph into selling this property. The revelation hit the gathered family like a physical blow. Jessica had been embezzling from our parents' successful import business, systematically stealing money over a 3-year period through increasingly sophisticated schemes. What had started as minor expense account padding had escalated to major theft when Derek's investment firm faced regulatory investigation, temporarily freezing their personal assets. Jessica had stolen family business funds to maintain their lifestyle, while Derek's legal troubles were resolved. You discovered this 2 weeks ago, during audit preparation. Margaret added, her voice thick with betrayal and heartbreak. $47,000 in falsified payments to vendors that don't exist, expense reports for business trips that never happened, conference fees for events you never attended. The financial crimes were extensive and carefully planned. Jessica had created fake vendor accounts, submitted fraudulent reimbursement requests, and systematically diverted business funds to personal accounts. She'd covered her tracks with elaborate documentation that temporarily fooled the bookkeeping staff but couldn't survive professional audit scrutiny. The reunion was never about bringing family together, Theodore explained to the stunned relatives. Jessica needed Ralph to sell this property quickly so she could replace the stolen money before we pressed criminal charges. She calculated that family pressure would force Ralph to share his inheritance, giving her access to funds that could cover her embezzlement. The vacation rental scheme now made perfect sense as part of Jessica's desperate attempt to generate quick cash while arranging property sale. She hadn't just been planning to use my house for a reunion. She'd been preparing to monetize it immediately afterward to service her debts and cover her theft. Derek's investment firm troubles weren't regulatory harassment. They were criminal investigations into client fund misappropriation. Derek had been stealing from investor accounts to cover personal expenses, and Jessica's business embezzlement was an attempt to maintain their lifestyle while he faced potential federal charges. Most family members began departing immediately, embarrassed by association and angry about being manipulated into Jessica's criminal cover story. Uncle Pete climbed into his RV with disgusted comments about wasting vacation time on family drama. Cousin Patricia loaded her golden retrievers, hastily avoiding eye contact with anyone involved in the confrontation. Aunt Carol, who'd driven 6 hours with specialized dietary supplies and diabetic cat equipment, was particularly upset about being deceived. "I canceled a business conference to attend this reunion," she informed Jessica coldly. "I spent $300 on travel and accommodation because I thought Ralph was generously hosting a family gathering. You've wasted everyone's time and money with your lies." But not everyone abandoned Jessica immediately. A few family members seemed torn between loyalty to her and shock at the criminal revelations. These relatives whispered among themselves, trying to process the information and decide how to respond to such dramatic family upheaval. Cameron surprised me by approaching the gate with genuine remorse in his voice. Through the intercom system, he apologized for years of enabling Jessica's manipulation through his silence and passivity. "Ralph, I've watched Jessica steamroll you our entire lives, and I never said anything because I was afraid of becoming her next target. I knew she was up to something with this reunion because she kept asking weird questions about property values and sale procedures. I should have warned you, but I was too much of a coward to get involved." Theodore approached the security camera with an expression of profound regret. "Son, I owe you an apology that's 28 years overdue. Your mother and I failed you by enabling Jessica's behavior and holding you responsible for problems she created. Your grandfather knew what he was doing when he left you this house. You're the only one who truly deserves it." The most devastating moment came when Jessica, realizing her criminal activity was fully exposed and her family support had evaporated, made one final desperate threat. "If you don't help me replace that money, I'll destroy your reputation," she screamed at the security camera. "I'll tell everyone you abandoned your family in their time of need. I'll make sure every relative knows you chose property over family loyalty. I'll ruin your life the same way you're ruining mine." But Jessica's threats carried no weight now that everyone understood her true motivations. The gathered family members had witnessed her psychological breakdown, discovered her criminal behavior, and realized they'd been manipulated into supporting elaborate deception. Her credibility was destroyed beyond repair. Derek had fled the scene with their twin daughters as soon as the embezzlement details became public, presumably to arrange legal representation and protect the children from further exposure to their mother's breakdown. Margaret approached the gate, last tears streaming down her cheeks as she addressed the security camera directly. "Ralph, sweetheart, I'm sorry we failed you so badly as parents. We enabled Jessica's behavior because we thought we were helping a struggling daughter, but we see now that we were actually enabling criminal activity while punishing you for having healthy boundaries. Please forgive us." As the crowd dispersed and vehicles departed, Jessica stood alone outside my locked gate. Her designer dress torn from attempting to climb the fence, her carefully styled hair disheveled from her violent breakdown. The isolation was complete. Family members had abandoned her, her husband had fled with their children, and her crimes were fully exposed. For 28 years, I'd wondered if I was the problem in family dynamics. Watching Jessica's complete meltdown and criminal exposure, I finally understood that I'd been the scapegoat for someone else's personality disorder and unlawful behavior. Saturday morning found me sitting on my deck with fresh coffee, watching seagulls dive for fish in the calm Atlantic surf. The property that had been under siege 24 hours earlier was now peaceful again, protected by security personnel who documented every moment of Jessica's criminal breakdown. Jack Sullivan's team had captured hours of footage showing Jessica's violent attempts to damage my property, her screamed confessions about financial crimes, and her threats to destroy my reputation if I didn't help cover her embezzlement. The evidence would support both criminal prosecution and civil litigation for her unauthorized contracts and identity theft. I emerged from the house at 10 o'clock and walked to the front gate where Jack waited with incident reports and video documentation. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for 28 years was about to conclude with legal consequences that would permanently establish boundaries Jessica could never cross again. "Mr. Miller, we've got everything documented," Jack reported. Attempted property damage, theft, trespassing after being warned off verbal threats, and admission of financial crimes. Local law enforcement is standing by to take your statement and arrest Ms. Miller on multiple charges. I opened the gate for the first time since changing the codes and stepped outside to address the small group that remained. My parents, Cameron, Jessica, and 2 police officers who'd responded to neighbor complaints about the disturbance. "Jessica, you asked what I was going to do?" I said calmly, looking directly at my sister for the first time in months. "Here's your answer. I'm pressing charges for fraud, identity theft, forgery, and attempted extortion. I'm also pursuing civil litigation for the unauthorized contracts, credit card charges, and vacation rental listing." Jessica's face transformed from defiance to panic as the reality of legal consequences became clear. She began pleading about family loyalty and protecting the children, appealing to exactly the manipulation tactics that had worked for 3 decades. "You should have considered family loyalty before stealing from Dad's business," I replied without emotion. "You should have thought about your children before committing multiple felonies in pursuit of covering your theft." Theodore nodded gravely, supporting my decision completely. "Son, you have our full cooperation with any legal proceedings. Jessica needs to face consequences, or she'll never change. We should have allowed this to happen years ago instead of enabling her behavior." Margaret wept openly, but didn't defend Jessica's actions. "We failed you both by not setting proper boundaries when you were children. Jessica learned she could manipulate people without consequences, and you learned you had to absorb other people's problems to maintain family peace. Neither lesson was healthy." The police officers took my statement and reviewed the security footage Jack provided. Jessica's violent attempts to damage property combined with her admitted financial crimes and threats against me supported multiple criminal charges. She was arrested on scene for criminal trespass, attempted property damage, and identity theft, pending further investigation of the embezzlement evidence. "Ms. Miller, you have the right to remain silent," Officer Rodriguez explained as he applied handcuffs. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Jessica's arrest marked the end of her ability to manipulate family dynamics through emotional blackmail and financial pressure. For the first time since childhood, her actions had consequences she couldn't avoid through charm tears or blame shifting. Cameron surprised me by requesting a private conversation after Jessica was taken away. We walked along the beach for 20 minutes while he shared years of suppressed observations about family dysfunction. "Ralph, I've been ashamed of my cowardice for years. I watched Jessica destroy your self-esteem, steal your money, and manipulate every family situation to her advantage. I knew it was wrong, but I was terrified of becoming her next target if I spoke up." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because watching you finally stand up to her gave me permission to stop being afraid. You're the strongest person in our family, even though everyone treated you like you were weak. It takes real strength to maintain boundaries when everyone's trying to break them down." Over the following weeks, legal proceedings unfolded exactly as predicted. Jessica pleaded guilty to embezzlement charges in exchange for a restitution plan and supervised probation. The vacation rental platform permanently banned her account after investigating similar fraud across multiple family properties. Criminal charges for identity theft and forgery resulted in community service requirements and financial penalties that effectively ended Jessica's ability to manipulate other family members through elaborate schemes. More importantly, family dynamics shifted permanently as other relatives recognized their role in enabling Jessica's destructive behavior. Several family members who'd given Jessica access to their properties changed locks and established clear boundaries about future interactions. Cousin David in New Hampshire discovered Jessica had been running unauthorized rental operations from his lake house for over a year, generating thousands of dollars in income while creating liability risks he'd never authorized. Uncle Marcus found evidence that Jessica had been renting his RV to strangers for music festivals and camping trips, explaining unusual mileage and unexplained wear patterns. The scope of Jessica's deception was staggering. She'd systematically exploited every family relationship with property access, creating elaborate rental businesses, while positioning herself as the generous coordinator of family resources. 6 months later, my novel about family dysfunction found a publisher through an agent who specialized in psychological drama. The book explored themes of scapegoating narcissistic abuse and the courage required to establish healthy boundaries in toxic family systems. I dedicated the book to anyone who has ever been the family doormat. You deserve better than absorbing everyone else's problems while being blamed for the consequences. The beach house became exactly what Grandpa intended: a peaceful retreat where I could write Red and host small gatherings with people who respected boundaries and treated me as an equal rather than a service provider. I established a small writer's residency program, inviting struggling authors to spend affordable weeks at the property, completing their projects. The program honored Grandpa's generous spirit while ensuring the house served creative purposes rather than enabling family dysfunction. My professional life flourished after the reunion crisis strengthened my boundary-setting skills. I received the promotion to senior marketing coordinator and began leading projects that required confident leadership rather than accommodating everyone else's preferences at my own expense. Most meaningfully, I met Lisa Rodriguez at a local coffee shop where I'd been writing during winter weekends. She taught kindergarten at a nearby elementary school and had grown up in a healthy family where boundaries were respected and manipulation wasn't tolerated. "I love that you know who you are and what you want," Lisa told me during one of our evening beach walks. So many people my age are still trying to please everyone else instead of building authentic lives. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, based on mutual respect rather than one person solving the other's problems. Lisa appreciated my independence and creativity, while I admired her confidence and emotional intelligence. 1 year after the reunion confrontation, I hosted a small Thanksgiving gathering that represented everything Jessica's manipulative event wasn't: voluntary attendance, genuine gratitude, mutual respect, and authentic connection. Cameron attended with his new girlfriend Sarah, a music teacher, who'd helped him develop realistic career goals and financial independence. Margaret and Theodore came after completing family therapy sessions that addressed their enabling behaviors and helped them understand healthy relationship dynamics. Lisa joined us with homemade pumpkin bread and stories from her kindergarten classroom that had everyone laughing until our stomachs hurt. We shared what we were genuinely grateful for, played board games that didn't involve competition or winning, and enjoyed each other's company without anyone keeping score of who contributed what. "This feels like the family gatherings I always hoped we could have," Margaret commented tearfully. "Everyone here by choice, everyone appreciated for who they are, everyone contributing what they can without keeping track." The evening concluded with Lisa and me walking along the moonlit beach while waves lapped gently at the shore. The house that had nearly been stolen from me through manipulation now represented everything I valued: independence, creativity, peace, and connections based on genuine care rather than obligation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ralph, this is Derek. Jessica is getting professional help and wants to apologize someday when she's ready to take full responsibility. No pressure, just wanted you to know she's working on herself. Hope you're well." I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges burned completely, and that's perfectly acceptable. Forgiveness doesn't require restoring relationships with people who've demonstrated they can't be trusted with access to your life. My story isn't about family reconciliation or learning to love unconditionally. It's about recognizing when someone's behavior is destroying your well-being and having the courage to protect yourself, even when other people disapprove of your boundaries. The beach house stands as my sanctuary, my creative space, and my reminder that property ownership includes the right to decide who gets access to your hospitality. Grandpa understood something about my character that took me 30 years to fully appreciate. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is refuse to enable other people's destructive behavior. On quiet mornings when I sit on the deck with coffee and watch dolphins play in the surf, I feel deeply grateful for the courage I found to say no to family manipulation. The word no had seemed impossible to speak for 28 years, but it turned out to be the key to everything I'd been hoping to find: respect, peace, authentic relationships, and a life that belongs entirely to me. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't respect your decisions? How did you find the courage to prioritize your well-being over other people's expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles gives us strength to make difficult but necessary changes. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction, and share this with anyone who might need encouragement to establish healthy boundaries. Remember, you deserve relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided obligation. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that your peace of mind is worth protecting even when other people try to convince you otherwise. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember that saying no to manipulation is saying yes to your own well-being.